When I moved to Louisville, Kentucky, to be the minister of a congregation there, we're having mic issues. We're not having mic issues. All right. I'm having mixed opinions. There we go. Thank you. Okay. All right. Thank you all. We're really a community in this together, aren't we? And I'm sure you online are having a similar experience. Okay. When I moved to Louisville, Kentucky to be the minister of a congregation there, I knew I needed to find a community. As ministers, while we are part of the community of the congregation we serve, we don't get our support from that community. We're getting a little bit of feedback. Are we good? Okay. All right. We don't get our support from the congregations that we serve, and so we need places where we are not the minister. It's essential that we find community in other ways outside of our congregations. And this is what led me to roller derby. A community of women and non-binary people who come together with a shared purpose and a shared love of skating. And I loved it. People often ask me, so I'll just tell you, my derby name was Live Fearless. Even after I stopped skating, those folks were part of my community, and in fact are still part of my community. When I moved to Chicagoland, it was a need for community that led me to find the Windy City Skaters, a diverse group of skaters in Chicago who have road raves, they call them, twice a month in fair weather. In the evening, we would skate along Chicago streets and paths, and some skaters have these enormous speakers, so there's always music, and some skaters have light-up wheels or light-up things, and so it's basically a party on skates. And for my 2 years there, it was essential to my well-being. And it is need for community that is leading me to be a part of creating a new skating group here in Indianapolis. I'm a firm believer that if it doesn't exist and you want something or need something, then you should work to create it. So that's what I'm doing. As you can probably tell, I find my community, my support, in skating. I get energy from participating in a shared experience with other people who have common interests. It helps me to deal with stress, and so it makes me a healthier, more well-balanced person, and I find friends that I can lean on in hard times. We human beings, we are communal animals. We don't do well on our own. We need each other. When we feel the need for community, we join or create clubs or churches or teams. We form book clubs and CrossFit groups and babysitting co-ops. The ways that we express our need for community are nearly endless. In a healthy community, people cheer each other on. They point out the holes in the pavement so that you don't skate into them and fall. And when you do fall, they help you get back up again. Because at some point, all of us will struggle and need support and encouragement. In a healthy community, people who are in a good place, who have energy, who have time, whose wounds are healed, are there to support those who are struggling. There's an ebb and a flow, a give and a take. At a minimum, being a part of a healthy community improves your quality of life, but it can also transform our lives and even our world. This is one reason the pandemic was so devastating. We were not able to be with our communities in the ways that we were used to. We had to figure out new ways of getting our need for community met, and even created new communities in the process. I love the poem that Colleen read a few minutes ago, in part because it encapsulates so much of our collective pandemic experience, and in part because it highlights how being part of a healthy community changes us as we move from the I to the we to the you. We enter a community often focused on our own needs and wants, What can I get from this community? How can it feed me? Then we start talking in we's as we associate ourselves more and more with the community. And then as our needs get met and we feel nurtured by the community and our wounds are healed, we are able to look beyond ourselves and invest energy into supporting others, into how can I support you? Now, if you notice, I keep saying healthy community because we know there's a lot of unhealthy community out there. And sometimes the difference is obvious, but sometimes not so much. So this morning, I want to look at 4 aspects of healthy community. Each of these could be their own sermon. Indeed, many of them will be down the road. But let's just do an overhead view for now and see how healthy community is about belonging. It's about boundaries. It's about being open. And it's about embodying our values. We're going to talk about those 4. So first, a healthy community is about belonging as opposed to fitting in. This language comes from something that sociologist and author Brené Brown has written and talked about. Belonging is about being accepted for who we are. It doesn't require us to change. The opposite of belonging is fitting in. That is, we have to be like others in the community in order to be accepted. Brown says, fitting in is about assessing your situation and becoming who you need to be accepted by the community. In a recent blog post, Unitarian Universalist minister, the Reverend Kimberly Debus, challenges us as Unitarian Universalists to stop requiring people to fit in. She says, we have to welcome others with an openness that says your whole self, with the fullness of all that you are and all you have experienced, belongs here. And we will learn about you as you learn about us, and we will love you, all of you. And we need to not just say it, she says, but do it. We must examine our biases, consider those things we ask of others that are about leaving their whole selves at the door, and make changes to how we welcome each other. Belonging to a healthy community doesn't mean we all think the same or feel the same or believe the same. It means that beyond all of these divisions, there is something larger than us as individuals that we are choosing to be a part of. That we recognize that we come from different places, have different lived experiences, and rather than trying to change that or make someone conform to fit in, we celebrate it. A healthy community is about belonging. A second aspect of healthy communities is boundaries. In both individuals and communities, boundaries define where something ends and something else begins, right? A healthy community is clear about who it is and what its expectations are. A person doesn't show up to a skating group expecting it to be a drum circle. Now, that may be a hyperbolic example, but I think that this is something that many of our Unitarian Universalist congregations sometimes lose sight of, that even as we strive to tell people that we will love you all, we must all recognize that there are certain behaviors that are not welcome. You're welcome to come, be a part of us. Your whole self is welcome. And there are certain behaviors that are not okay. In our Unitarian Universalist congregations, this is the role of covenant, to define the boundaries. In congregations, our covenants are both implicit and explicit, and we're going to talk a lot more about covenant in the coming weeks and months. Our implicit covenants are about fitting in rather than belonging, right? They're not spoken or written, but often need to be discerned through osmosis, through a gradual assimilation. It's about learning how to fit in. Implicit covenants are the social norms of the congregation. Some are more obvious and mostly harmless, like how in pretty much all Unitarian Universalist congregations, there is both worship and social time on Sunday morning. That is part of our implicit covenant with each other. But sometimes they aren't as obvious and can be rough to figure out, especially for people who are new or for people who are neurodiverse. Like, who are the matriarchs and patriarchs in the congregation? And when do you need their permission or support when starting a new program or making a change to the congregation? That can be hard to suss out. Our explicit covenants, on the other hand, help people to know what the expectations are. When someone joins a congregation, as we celebrated a few moments ago, there's an explicit expectation that members will contribute their time and their talent and their treasure. And each week we recite the poetic covenant together that tells us how we want to be in the world. That is another explicit covenant. Many of our Unitarian Universalist congregations are also adopting congregation-wide relational or behavioral covenants. These are covenants that say how we will be together to create the brave space in which we can search for truth and meaning together. This sort of relational or behavioral covenant is something that all our religious education classrooms here at UUI already have. As usual, the RE programs are leading the way. And it's something that we're going to be talking about, expanding not just from the RE program, but to the whole congregation as a part of our work together during this interim period. But for now, just remember that covenants help us to create boundaries which are essential to a healthy community. All right, moving on to the third characteristic of a healthy community, that they be open. Healthy is generally defined as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not merely as the absence of disease or infirmity. This means that as the physical and mental and sociological conditions of the world around us change, healthy communities change and adapt as well. This requires that a healthy community be open to new experiences and to new learning. Being open to new experiences can mean having the resilience to adjust to really big and life-changing things, like adjusting to the lock-in at the start of the pandemic. And it can also be smaller, like openness to changes in your order of service. Being open to new learning means that revelation is not sealed. It's acknowledging that there's still stuff out there that we don't know, something that's a core of Unitarian Universalism. Sometimes this learning is easier to tackle, like learning how to use Google Drive, for example. But sometimes it's a lot more challenging. One of the things I've been so proud of in our Unitarian Universalist faith was the white supremacy teach-in that occurred back in 2017 when BIPOC people, that's Black, Indigenous, people of color, in our congregations shared about the ways that we perpetuate harmful practices in our congregations and in our individual lives. And our predominantly white congregations listened. And we are still learning what it means and how to be truly anti-racist. Being open to change is an essential part of being a healthy community. And lastly, a healthy community embodies its values. Oftentimes the values are what a group is based on. A skate group values skating. A Stitch and Bitch group values friendship and knitting. For faith communities, like with Covenant, there's implicit and explicit values. Often they contradict themselves, such as when a congregation, now I'm not saying this is you, I've seen this all the time, so often they contradict themselves, such as when a congregation says it wants to grow, but then won't actually make any of the changes necessary for that to happen. But when the implicit and the explicit values are in alignment, when a community works to embody its values, it is transformative. When a church shows up at a pride parade or offers all ages owl, that transforms the larger community that that congregation is a part of. When a church really digs deep into becoming anti-racist, these are ways that we embody our values. When a congregation works to create a culture of belonging rather than one of fitting in, that is a way that we embody our values. When a congregation sets healthy, clear, explicit boundaries through covenant, that is a way that a congregation embodies our values. And when a congregation listens to and is open to the wisdom of those in the community who are often marginalized, that also is a way of embodying our values. And these are all markers of a healthy community. As Zan said to Tara in our Words for All Ages, when you get up there, remember, you are not alone. Your community is with you. We need each other. And together, we are smarter and we are stronger. We learn better. We adapt better. We're more resilient. We're just plain better together. Here at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Indianapolis, let us be about building a healthy community where people are told that they belong, where we have clear boundaries, where we are open to new experiences and new learning, and where we embody our values bravely. May it be so. May we make it so.